Say more about what. I mean, we know the word cohort, but what's a cohort? Like, what are the qualities of a cohort
Yeah.
as opposed to just a group of people in a room?
Well, so one of the things that we say a lot is so, like, for example, we have this online adaptive capacity cohort.
Yeah.
The way it works is you bring at least 3 or 4 people with you. So if you're the
Hmm.
pastor of the church and you want your church to develop the capacity to lead change well, first thing you got to do is you got to get 3 or 4 other people to come with you on this journey. And
Yeah.
and that's alone a challenge, right? Because many of us are like,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be the leader. Well, maybe I'm supposed to go get the expert, advice or training and then come back and share it. No,
Right.
get a group of people who are going to be your team, and together you're going to learn. So
Yeah.
your job as the leader is really the person who's the convener of the cohort and the
Yeah.
first learner. And then what we do
Hmm.
is we put those teams in a cohort with 4 other teams. And so what you end up with is a lot of just this collaborative learning of different people from
Yeah.
different contexts, different places, different
Yeah.
settings, all
Yeah.
learning together. And
Yeah.
I just was with a group this last weekend in Atlanta, and they 3 of the churches there are in one of our learning cohorts, and they got together, and it was interesting. We started asking them questions, and they've been in COVID, so they've only seen each other on Zoom. So it's the first time
Hmm.
they've ever been in a room together. Immediately, they start just sharing experiences. Hey, in our setting, it's like this. What about in your setting? Because
Yeah.
what we're learning is it's not just one person who has all the answers. We can actually learn from each other a lot. So
Yeah.
I think of a cohort as a group of people who are all mutually committed to learning together.
Yeah. So here's what that reminds me of. It makes me think of your book, Canoeing the Mountains,
Mm.
and how Lewis and Clark and their little group are sort of a cohort
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
way, right? Maybe use that as an example. Feel free, right, to talk about your book. But right, they were a cohort who all brought different perspectives to this exploration project. Some of them had expertise on what was up around the next bend or over the next crest, and some had expertise on how to build a canoe, which didn't turn out very necessary the further along they got in this. But anyway, say something about that maybe, and how that's a metaphor for what we need.
Yeah, well, it's exactly. So I always say, one of my favorite, my two favorite parts of the Lewis and Clark story are both
Hmm.
really disruptive to the way we think about leadership. The first one is they're known as Lewis and Clark, like one word,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you can be in places like Lewiston, Idaho, and not know it's named after Meriwether Lewis. Or you can be
Hmm.
like me. I was in Clark County, Kentucky,
Hmm.
and I walked by a statue of William Clark and
Huh.
didn't realize that it was him because I was used to seeing them together. And
Yeah.
even so, then you recognize that partnership was really at the heart because they were going to explore. They were going so far off the map that one scholar said, they went to a place they knew less about the American West than Neil Armstrong knew about the moon. Like
Hmm.
they were in.
That's wild.
Neil Armstrong had seen pictures of the moon. They had no
Yeah.
idea what was coming. So they
Yeah.
took this group of people with them. And one of my favorite parts is further they got, the more they realized they didn't have enough people with them. They actually had to
Hmm.
add
Hmm.
Sacagawea, a Native
Yeah.
American woman, to their
Yeah.
group who became the expert guide when they got off the map. So
Yeah.
here are these two, men of European descent, have all the kind of power and privilege of their age,
Yeah.
military leader, political leader, and they end up having to learn to listen and learn alongside a
Yeah.
person who, I mean, they literally would barely have considered worthy of listening to if they were just
Yeah.
in regular society. So
Right.
it changed them and transformed them,
Right.
at least
Right.
while they were on the journey.
Right.
There's some question about how changed they were later on, right?
Right, right, right. But the correlation then to our own learning today in a world that is constantly changing is we need to listen and learn to listen to those voices that we're not necessarily accustomed to listening to,
Yeah.
and and there's a lot we can learn